Okay, so get ready for a deep dive today because we're heading straight into the world of geopolitics.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride.
We're breaking down this really interesting discussion about, well, global power dynamics.
It was originally in Hindi.
Yeah, so consider this your all-access pass to some serious insider insights.
The big thing they're talking about, and this is wild, is could Iran and Israel...
They're enemies, right?
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
But could they, this is what's crazy, could they actually become allies?
Whoa, okay, hold on. That's like a geopolitical plot twist. What would even bring them together?
So the expert, he brings up this really interesting point about history.
Okay.
He says Persians, especially the Shia Muslims and Jewish people, they haven't always been enemies.
Huh.
Like their current conflict, it's more recent, not this ancient thing like the Sunni-Shia divide.
So you're saying it's not like some deeply rooted hatred?
Exactly. It's more complex than that.
Okay, so then what's fueling all the animosity right now?
He points to this big shift in global energy. Oil, that's been like the king of the Middle East forever, it's losing its grip.
Interesting.
And that weakens countries like Saudi Arabia. They built their whole power on oil, right?
Right. Makes sense.
But now it's all about natural gas. That's the future.
It's like the whole game is changing.
And guess who's sitting on a treasure trove of natural gas?
Don't tell me Iran.
Bingo.
Yeah.
They're going to be major players in this new energy landscape.
So even countries that right now are totally against Iran, they might need to make nice to get their hands on that gas.
You got it. Energy security trumps everything, even old grudges. Even Russia. And they've got their own resources. Even they might see an advantage in teaming up with Iran.
Wow. It really is like a big chess game, this global politics thing.
Absolutely.
But here's another thought. What about the people in Iran? Can they actually change their government's stance on Israel?
That's the million-dollar question. The expert talks about this tension, right, between the elected leaders in Iran. They might be open to change. But then you've got the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC.
They're like the hardliners.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're deeply, deeply entrenched in that anti-West, anti-Israel mindset.
So it's like a tug of war inside Iran.
Exactly. One side wants to maybe play the game differently, be more pragmatic, but the other side is clinging to this, well, maybe outdated ideology.
And the whole world's watching this play out.
Absolutely. And the expert even hints, just hints, that a regime change isn't impossible. Like it could happen, maybe sparked by this very internal conflict.
Wow.
High-stakes stuff.
No kidding. Okay, so we've got this potential power shift. Old alliances crumbling. New ones may be forming.
It's a lot to unpack, for sure.
That's an understatement. It really makes you think about how we understand what's going on in the world, whose side is whose and all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of this whole Iran situation, it reminds me of something else, something I saw firsthand.
Oh, yeah. So I was in Israel, right, during that recent conflict.
Right.
And wow, the pro-Palestinian sentiment online.
It was everywhere.
It was intense.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got me thinking, is Israel always getting portrayed as the bad guy? Unfairly.
Well, the expert we're talking about, he brings a really interesting perspective to that.
Okay.
He says, look, Israel, they've been under threat since day one, constantly facing attacks.
Which, I mean, it's true. They have had a lot of wars and conflicts.
And he talks about this long history of persecution against Jewish people all over the world.
Except for in India, right.
He actually makes a point to mention that India has been a place of welcome for Jewish people historically.
Yeah, which is pretty remarkable, given how things are globally.
For sure.
But here's what's crazy to me. Even with that history, being attacked, targeted, Israel still gets labeled the aggressor.
It's a good point. You don't see that same level of, condemnation for other countries.
Exactly. So what gives? This is where he gets kind of wild. He suggests that it's not an accident, that there's a deliberate effort to shape public opinion.
You mean propaganda?
Exactly. A whole system designed to make people see things a certain way.
Like an information war playing out in the background?
I got it.
Wow. Okay, so how does Israel play into this?
Well, he says they've made a choice. They focus on actual security, military strength over PR.
So they'd rather be strong than look good, so to speak.
That's one way to put it. It's a very, proactive approach to security.
Proactive how?
The expert actually uses this phrase. He says it's if someone rises to kill you, kill them first.
Wow. Okay, that's intense.
It is, but it kind of explains their mindset.
And it makes something else he said make sense.
What's that?
The whole targeted assassination thing?
I know.
He says Israel does a lot of those, more than people realize.
And what's really interesting is that he traces that tactic way back.
To
Lenin. the KGB. It's not some new invention that's been around for a long time.
It's just nobody talks about it.
Exactly. But Israel, they seem to have, perfected it.
It's all very cloak and dagger stuff.
It is. It reminds me of that book, Prophets from War. Have you heard of it?
I have, by that former Mossad officer, right?
Yeah, apparently it gives this whole other perspective on how conflict gets used.
For like strategic gain and stuff.
Exactly. Like there are these hidden levels of, planning and manipulation going on that we never even see.
It really makes you question everything you see in the news, doesn't it?
Totally. Makes you realize there's always more to the story.
Like with Israel, maybe their image, it's not just bad PR. Maybe it's, I don't know, deliberate.
Could be. It's something to consider.
It's amazing how these power dynamics, these information games, they're everywhere.
Yeah. It's not just about armies and borders anymore.
Speaking of power, the expert also gets into this whole Trump-Biden thing and how they're seen in the world.
Oh, yeah, that's a fascinating one.
It's like one's the tough guy, the other, well, not so much. But what's really going on behind the scenes?
This is where he gets into this idea of the deep state. You ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah. It's kind of spooky.
It is. He describes it as this network, right? Intelligence guys, academics, powerful people pulling strings behind the curtain.
Chills, man, chills. It reminds me of this time I was at Harvard.
Oh, yeah.
I won't get into it, but let's just say I got a little peek behind that curtain, and it was, well, let's just say it left an impression.
I bet. So the expert, he ties this deep state to Trump, specifically his whole America First thing and leaving Afghanistan.
You think that ruffled some feathers?
Big time. He says it directly threatened the military-industrial complex.
Which is?
Part of that deep state. Wars are big business,
So Trump, by pulling back, he was messing with some serious money.
And power. The expert's point is, Trump disrupted the established order, maybe without even meaning to, and that made him a target.
It's like stepping on a hornet's nest. You don't know you've done it till it's too late.
Exactly. And then all those hornets come for you no matter how powerful you think you are.
It makes you wonder about all the things we don't see, the forces shaping the world. One thing that's been on my mind lately is this whole online gaming thing, especially the violent games.
What about it?
Do you think that plays into this? Like, could it be part of some larger strategy?
That's interesting you say that. The expert actually connects it to India.
India.
Yeah, he says, look, constant exposure to violence, even virtually, especially for young people, it desensitizes.
So it's like they're being conditioned.
In a way, yeah. It's about shaping mindsets, making societies more prone to conflict, more divided.
Wow. It's not even about controlling land anymore. It's about controlling minds.
And for a country like India, with so much diversity, so much complexity, that's dangerous. Maybe more dangerous than any army.
It's like we're sleepwalking into this future where the biggest threat isn't out there, it's within us.
That's exactly what the expert is saying. He's worried about internal collapse, not just in India, but everywhere.
From what, like drugs, social breakdown, all that?
All of it, fueled by this manipulation, this constant barrage of information.
So what do we do?
He says we have to wake up. Start thinking for ourselves, questioning what we see and hear, really understanding the world, not just the headlines.
He makes you think, that's for sure. If the real battle is for our minds, how do we fight back? How do we build a better future, a stronger future?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's not an easy one to answer.
No, but it's one we have to ask. Well, that was a heck of a deep dive. Thanks for exploring all this with us. Until next time, stay curious and keep asking those tough questions.